let's get going. Wanted to welcome everybody to the closing keynote. Thank everybody for coming out to Affiliate Summit East 2013. It's been a pretty amazing 3 days for me, full of great meetings, a lot of meeting new people, a lot of connecting with people that I've known forever, people that are pretty much family to me, and some amazing speakers. I hope you enjoyed everything that we brought so far. I've learned something from every keynote that's come up to this point and respected the heck out of everybody that's been up here, and that continues on as we close out. Our closing keynote is Rae Hoffman. Rae is the CEO of PushFire. She's a lot of things. She's an amazing SEO mind. She's a force of nature. If you've met Rae, you know, and you'll remember it pretty much forever. She's often outspoken, sometimes profane, probably will be coming up soon here. So get ready, hold on to your hats. She's been confronted with some challenges over the course of her life that would have a lot of lesser people kind of rolled up in a ball and trying to figure out how the heck to get out of it. But to say that she's a survivor would be to be selling her short. And the message she's going to bring here in just a couple seconds, she's going to talk about some challenges that she faced that motivated her not just to survive, but to overcome and to be a huge success and somebody that inspires me. So everybody welcome Sugar Rae Hoffman.
Thank you. Hey guys, is this on? Am I good? Can y'all hear me in the back? Okay. So I apologize. I am not as dynamic a speaker as Will, so I can't walk back and forth. I kind of have to pay attention to what's down here. So as Wade said, my name's Rae Hoffman. I go by Sugar Rae online. I'm the CEO of a marketing agency called PushFire, but I'm better known in the affiliate community as Sugar Rae. I am profane. I don't think about it before I curse, so unfortunately I can't think about not cursing. So if anybody's offended by language, I apologize in advance. So when Sean first asked me to do this keynote, honestly, I was a little hesitant to do it because I definitely am not going to win any Toastmasters awards for as far as my speaking capabilities. But I am very passionate about what I'm going to be up here talking about. So you guys are going to have to bear with me because it's the first time that I've talked about anything in front of an audience this big that was not technically related to SEO. So in addition to who I am as a business person, I'm also a mom to 4 kids. And the greatest lessons that I've ever learned in my life came from being the mom to my oldest son. My oldest son, CJ, had a massive bilateral stroke when he was 2 weeks old. It damaged about 80% of his brain, and as a result, he was severely physically and mentally handicapped for his entire life. This past November, he passed away. He was 15 years old when he did. And it really kind of forced me to look back and look at all of the ways that having him as my son changed my life, not only personally, but in business as well. And I absolutely would not be standing here today if I had not been his mom. So I know that the topic's kind of heavy, so now everybody's sitting in here, and I've had a few people tell me, that they're concerned about whether or not they're going to cry, and unfortunately, there are going to be some heavy points in this because I do kind of want to drive home to you and put you with me where I was at certain phases. But at the same time, this is more about learning from all the stuff that he taught me and how you guys can take it home and apply it to your own life and your own businesses to kind of move yourselves forward. So I call this 11 things that he taught me about life and business. So number 11 is that not everything is going to go according to plan. In 1997, I had a perfectly healthy baby boy. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. And I apologize about photo quality. I don't know how they look to you guys, but I was poor in 1997, so I didn't have a digital camera. So, we're dealing with scans of like real life photos. But he was perfectly healthy. There was absolutely nothing wrong with him. And you kind of, I don't know if, even if you don't have kids in here, if you've ever started a business, you kind of have your plan for how things are going to go, right? So in 6 months, I'm going to be here, and in 12 months, I'm going to be here. And when you're a parent, you kind of think, oh, well, he's probably definitely going to play football. If he's my kid, he was going to play football. So he's probably definitely going to play football. And, I hoped he looked like his dad. You know, he's a fairly good-looking guy. And I figured he would definitely have my mouth and my street smarts. But, you know, in one moment with him, everything in my entire life changed. So I'm going to walk you guys through the morning that my life changed. And that was, I woke up, it was probably about 7 a.m. My son was 2 weeks old. And so the first thing that I thought was, holy crap, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. Now, anybody in here that has kids knows a 2-week-old baby does not sleep through the entire night. And so I looked over at his bassinet, which was right next to my bed, and it was literally shaking. So I walked over there, and he was moving his arm in a ton of movements like this. And so I immediately went out and I called his pediatrician. And granted, I had called his pediatrician a few times because he had been acting a little weird for a few days. And so at this point, I had my then husband call the pediatrician because I said, he thinks I'm crazy, like you need to call him. So my then husband called the pediatrician, explained that my son, you know, was doing this weird movement with his arm. And the pediatrician told my then husband that his wife had new mom syndrome. She needed to accept that nothing was wrong with her baby, and to essentially very nicely stop calling him. And that if it didn't stop in a few hours, then I should take him to the hospital. So I figured, screw that. Took him to the hospital right away. And of course, in true, your child ever do something like really, really awesome, and you're like, oh, wait, you gotta see this. She does this, and then the kid stands there and looks at you like you're crazy. So of course I take him to the hospital, and he stops the second before we walk through the door, right? So here I am in the emergency room, they're calling the pediatrician, and the pediatrician's like, she's kind of crazy. You know, she's a new mom. I was 21 years old, by the way, when I had my son. And so they kind of run their blood tests, you know, and run their CT scan and do all the things they need to do because I brought him through the door of the emergency room. And as we're sitting in the room waiting for the results, he starts doing it again. So I walk out to the hallway and I find the nurse. It was a male nurse, and he was holding a clipboard, and I said, he's doing that thing again. Like, can you come in and take a look at it? So the nurse, you know, not in a bad mood, but just in kind of a interrupting his day, you know, he put the clipboard back in the little thing on the wall. And he walked into my son's room, and he took one look at my son on that bed, and he turned sheet white. And he ran out into the hallway, and the next thing I know, they're calling a code white over all of the speakers, which a code white is the same thing as a code blue. It just means that it's a child. So people start running into the room, pushing us out of the way. And, you know, he ended up, they told us he was having seizures. And so the first thing that they thought was maybe he has meningitis. So they do the test for that. It comes up negative. And they tell us that he needs to be transported to the Children's Hospital, which is about an hour and a half away, because they don't have the capabilities to take care of him there. And so the Children's Hospital, we couldn't bay flight him because of his seizures. So the Children's Hospital drove all the way to our local hospital, picked him up, put him in a little incubator, and put him out into the ambulance. And the first thing that they said to us was, only one of you can go. It was going to be me, whether I had to trample an elephant or not, to get in the ambulance. So we drove to the Children's Hospital. We get there, the doors open. I mean, like, this is like a scene off of CSI. Doors open, they get out, they go running down the hallway. I'm running behind them, trying to keep up with them. And we get into this room, and there's this dude in a pair of jeans and a tank top, and he's giving orders to everybody. You know, and I'm thinking, who is this random guy? Turns out he was a pediatric neurology specialist. And so they came in, and they told us that he was having massive seizures. They had counted over 300 in the time that they first found it to when he ended up at the Children's Hospital. And so they said that they were going to give him this medication, and this medication very likely could make him stop breathing. So, but they were prepared for that. And at some point in time, though, I may be told that he's on a ventilator, which you can see by the bottom picture that ended up happening less than 24 hours later. So for 2 weeks, he was on life support. And he was no bigger. By the way, he was in the MICU. Once you go home, you're no longer considered neonatal, no matter how small you are. So he literally fit on a pillow on top of the hospital bed. And they had him on life support, and they told us that it was just a seizure disorder. That, and at the time I didn't think just a seizure disorder. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. He's going to be 12. He's going to be in the middle of his class. He's going to flop down on the ground. Everybody's going to make fun of him. This is the worst thing that could ever happen. And then at the 5-week mark, when he was 5 weeks old, they had said that, we could go ahead and take him home, and he was going to have to be on this medication probably for the rest of his life because they didn't know what was causing the seizures, but that he would be fine other than the seizure disorder. And he had had a small hematoma on his head since he was born, and it was not a big deal, but they said they may need to drain it if it didn't go away. And so I'd been in the hospital now for 5.5 weeks. And because it was an hour and a half away, I was sleeping, in the waiting room at Ronald McDonald House, et cetera. And I said, you know what, now, you guys need to check this thing out now because I'm not leaving and coming back. And so they ran a CAT scan, or an MRI, sorry, to look at the hematoma. And that was when they found the brain damage. And they found out that he had suffered a massive bilateral stroke. He had gotten a clot. It was ischemic. He had a clot in his main artery in his neck, and it cut off the blood flow to his brain. And a bilateral stroke is where you have a stroke on both sides. And I remember thinking, a stroke? He was 2 weeks old when he came into the hospital. Like, kids don't have strokes. But the truth is, and I'm going to give you all a little bit of facts on pediatric stroke, why I've got the microphone here. But actually, it can happen in teenagers. It can happen in children. It can even happen while you're pregnant, which they call a perinatal stroke. It happens a lot more often than we might think. Statistics show that kids under the age of 15, 6 out of every 100,000 will end up having a stroke. That number, when he had his stroke, was believed to be more like 25 in 100,000. Or sorry, was believed to be, yes, 25 in 100,000. Stroke is one of the top 10 causes of death in children because doctors are so unaware of what it looks like. 20 to 40% of kids that have a stroke die immediately after they've had that stroke. African American children are more likely to have a stroke than Caucasian or Asian children. About half of the children presenting with stroke had a previously identified risk factor, and boys have a higher risk than girls. The occurrence of a bilateral stroke in adults occurs in 0.27% of all strokes. And so the odds of a child having a bilateral stroke, they don't even have aggregate statistics on because it's so rare. And I always used to joke that my son won the lottery in a very bad thing. So my point in telling you guys all of this is that in that instance, the plan, everything that I thought my life was going to be, everything I thought my son's life was going to be, was completely gone. And one of the things that taught me was that the ability to be successful in life, in business, et cetera, does not hinge on whether or not you have an awesome plan. Everybody has an awesome plan. What it comes down to is whether or not you can adapt that plan when something comes up that wasn't in your plan, that you weren't expecting. And I think that the ability to be able to change what I saw as being the perfect outcome in my life was the only reason that I was able to get through this and move forward and get to where I'm at now. Adaption is a skill that entrepreneurs need to possess, affiliates as well. And so if you take nothing else away from this, take away from it that life is not going to go according to plan, and you can't crawl up in a little ball on the side of the room, you have to simply move past it. So number 10 would be complaining changes nothing, action changes everything. Your first thought when this happens is, why him? And your second thought, as much as people may not want to admit it, is, why me? And the bottom line was that it didn't matter. It did not matter why it happened. It didn't matter how it happened. All that mattered was it did happen, and nothing about knowing why was going to change the fact that it happened. And we just needed to move forward. And so one of the things that I subconsciously made the decision to do was not to be a victim. And complaining makes you a victim. Actually doing something about your situation puts you back in control. And you do have the choice there on how you handle it. The biggest thing that I am likely to ream somebody's ass about on the internet is when they give me excuses on why they can't do something. For every single negative thing that happens to you in your life, you have a choice as to how you're going to react to it. I felt really alone after he had his stroke. They told me the likelihood of ever meeting another parent whose kid had a bilateral stroke was like, I had a better chance of winning the lottery. So I went online and I ended up accidentally founding the first national support group for parents and families of pediatric stroke survivors to ever register with the AHA when I was 22 years old. We had over 5,000 families come through that group. We were able to get national media coverage in USA Today, on Good Morning America. We acted as kind of a hub to find the news outlets, the type of kids that they were interested in covering. The National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke used us to fund their research studies in a person manner, not a money manner, obviously, but would contact us and say, hey, we need kids between the age of 10 and 13 whose stroke was caused by this so that we can do a study on it in order to move forward in the numbers. And my choice of acting versus complaining would actually eventually lead me into affiliate marketing, which would eventually change my life, change my kids' lives, or my son's life, and then my future kids' lives. So I'm a really big believer that you don't complain about a circumstance or a problem. You just have to act and move past it. So number 9, your situation does not determine your results, your attitude does. So this one I don't really need many of the notes for. I just want to make sure I don't skip over stuff because I don't want to get down there later and be like, oh. But your situation does not determine your results, your attitude does. Bottom line is that I enter, if I had 8 bonbons, watched Jerry Springer, and collected, state assistance for the rest of my life, there is not a single person on the planet that would have blamed me. I entered the foster care system when I was 13. I was on my own from the time that I was 17. I have nothing but a GED. I still have nothing but a GED, and the only reason that I even have a GED is because when I moved to Florida, you couldn't get a driver's license if you were under 18 and had dropped out of school and I needed to work. So to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't have a GED had that not been the rule. I got married at 19, and by the time that I was 21, I was a mom to a severely multiply handicapped child. And everything about that was a struggle. I mean, if we needed a $300 bath chair, to us back then, it might as well have been $300,000. We couldn't afford that. We got our phone shut off every other month trying to juggle all of the payments because I had this severely handicapped kid that made it so that I couldn't work, and we were trying to survive on one construction worker's income. And I remember one day that I was sitting out on my front porch and I kind of looked at, I lived in this 1,100 square foot house, which is kind of a lie because that included the garage. And so we lived like in this little 1,100 square foot house, and whatever you would picture a mobile home look like, but not exactly mobile, that's what it looked like. And I was sitting out in front of this thing, and our electric bill had just been shut off for the 90th time. And we had, just gone back up and paid to have it turned back on. And I remember sitting there and just kind of looking up and going, nobody is going to change this for you. The only person that is going to change the situation that you're in right now, and more importantly, change my son's situation, by the way, I don't know if I've mentioned that his name was CJ. I apologize if I haven't. But the only thing that was going to change CJ's situation was if I actually did something about it. And so I am a really big believer in the fact that your excuses are invalid. I don't care if you've had a bad upbringing. I don't care if you've had a bad marriage. I don't care if your hair caught on fire last week. There is no excuse for not going after what you want. And if you're not where you want to be in life, if your business is not where you want to be, if you are not trending to be where you want to be, there is only one person that you need to blame for that. And you can go into the bathroom and look in the mirror and you can find the responsible individual in front of you. I ended up joining a message board because I had been doing this support group online and figured there's got to be a way I can make some money online. I couldn't work and I didn't know anything about the internet, but I kind of fell into affiliate marketing. And a guy picked me out of a message board and plucked me up out of that message board and said, I think you're going to be really good at this. So I'm going to introduce you to a few people. And they never gave me fish. They only ever taught me to fish. That guy was actually, who is now officially an affiliate marketing legend of Affiliate Summit, was Mike Mackin. And so he basically plucked me out and said, you are going to be able to do really good things. And I kind of went with that. I got serious about getting shit done, about changing our situation, and changing where we were going to be in 5 years. And I'll be honest with you, at the time, I was thinking, if I can make like $1,000 a month from affiliate marketing, oh my God, we would be rich. Like that was like, you know, we would be like baller level, like Kraft macaroni and cheese instead of like the generic macaroni and cheese. And that's really all I had set out to do. And it ended up that I actually ended up being very good at affiliate marketing, and blew away any income expectations within 6 months that I had ever expected to make from it. And I think all of that boils down to, you know, I had two choices when he had his stroke. I could either sit there and say, why me, and watch Jerry Springer. I watch Maury, but not judging. But so I could have either sat there and wallowed in it, or I could have gone out and done something to change how I felt about it. And by doing that, I was able to end up falling into a very lucrative career. So, and that's my other one too. I kind of crossed that out because I was trying to be polite to Sean, but then later slides, yeah, we just lost all that. But you know, this is the truth. They really are. Everybody's got excuses. I don't care what yours are. You are responsible for where you end up in life. So that would be the second thing I would take away from this. So it's possible to say nothing yet influence everything. So in the 15 years that CJ was on this earth, he never said one word. He was not capable of talking, and he was profoundly mentally retarded, so he also was not capable of really understanding that there was a need to talk. But bottom line is that despite that fact, he had a ripple effect on the world, on everything around him. You know, whether it be the fact that $40,000 has been raised in his name to date for pediatric stroke research. You know, Ashley came up to me at this conference and said to me that the day my son passed away, she had happened to launch a Kickstarter campaign for a family member, sister, who had found out that she had a brain tumor and her child had CP and they needed to get like reliable transportation. And she just came up to me and told me at this conference that she had received a lot of donations in my son's name because the timing just happened to be really, really close. And so that's kind of the thing that I take away from it, is despite the fact that he was never able to say anything, you know, his life has had such a ripple effect from the day that he was born. And, you know, I had said before, why, it doesn't matter why. But you find out over the years that there is kind of a reason for everything. I'm a believer in karma. And so there was some reason that he was placed on this earth and that stroke happened to him. And I think it has to do with the change that he's been able to cause on the world around him. His siblings have a sense of compassion that most people will never hold. It's what brought me into this industry. So anybody who's ever read my blog, anybody who takes anything home from this keynote, anybody that's ever attended one of my sessions, anything that you've ever learned from me is as a result of his ripple effect. And so for me, I think what I take away from that is how he lived his life. So despite the fact that he had every reason in the world to complain, I kid you not, these are not 6 like pictures that I had to dig out of somewhere. The child never had anything but a smile on his face. So despite the fact that he personally faced more challenges than probably 99.9% of this room, that's how he lived his life. And that's something that I took from, you know, into myself, that you kind of just have to make the best of every situation, the way that he was able to make the best of his situation. And the other thing that I want you guys to remember is who you are is greater than what you say. I don't care what you say on Twitter or Facebook or how motivational you are or what you say you're going to do, or even sometimes what you actually do. Who you are, what type of example you set is what people truly take away. And so you have to be really careful to back up what you say with who you are and as a person and what you choose to do in your life. So you'll never know what you're capable of until you try. 15 years ago, I was a waitress. If you had told me that I was going to be the CEO of a company in 15 years, I'd have laughed my ass off at you. I mean, I was a damn good waitress, don't get me wrong, but like, I would have never thought I'd be standing up here on this stage 15 years ago. I didn't know if I could run a business. I didn't know if I could do affiliate marketing. I didn't know if I was capable of learning this SEO thing that everybody was talking about pre-Google. But what I did know was that I had nothing to lose, like absolutely nothing to lose. And where so many people are scared to take that leap because they don't know whether or not, and I don't care if it's business, I don't care if it's you've always wanted to act in a play, but you've never had the balls to actually go out and audition for a role. But you never know what you're capable of until you try. And being his mom put me in a situation where I had absolutely nothing to lose. And as Eminem says, success was my only motherfucking option, failure's not. So that was kind of the situation that I was in, that I was forced into. And had I not, I never would have known that I could get, had I not tried, I wouldn't be standing up here. This is like, so Will Smith, believe it or not, like aside from everybody in this room can probably recite the theme song to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But dude is actually a really, really, really smart businessman. And he came from, humble means in Philadelphia. And actually, that's just a total coincidence, by the way. That's actually not purposely in there because we're in Philadelphia. But he did an interview where he said, the interviewer had asked him what he thought his secret to success was. And he said the only thing that he saw that was distinctly different about him was that he was not afraid to die on a treadmill. And his reason for saying that was that if you told him that he could not run as long as you on a treadmill, he'd get on that treadmill and he would run. And you may beat him, but he was going to die of a heart attack gasping as the treadmill rolled him off of it because he doesn't know how to give up. He doesn't accept excuses. He doesn't let anything stop him. He puts his sights on what he wants to do and he goes after it. And I'm sure if you had told him when he was 15 that he was now going to be one of the biggest, Hollywood moguls there was, he probably would have laughed at you too. But he's not afraid to die on that treadmill. I definitely am not afraid to die on that treadmill. There are way worse things in life, and you guys have to learn to not be afraid to die on that treadmill. So being CJ's mom taught me that there are a lot of good people in this world. There really are. There are a lot of people that have donated to pediatric stroke and, have told me, the impact that he's had. There are a lot of good people like Missy that, drive for breast cancer awareness, and Shannon with leukemia. And then there's assholes. I've unfortunately learned that. So, when it comes to other people's opinions not mattering, CJ was about 6 years old. He was fed by a G-tube, and he was fed by like a little pump. So he'd have his little wheelchair, and then he'd have his little pump with a little IV looking bag hanging from it. And, it was constantly feeding him. And I remember standing at a deli counter, and this lady looks over and she's like, "Can you believe she brought him in here?" And I just kind of looked and I'm like, asshole. But you don't say anything because I wish that I could say that those instances were few and far between. But I've had people damn near do swan dives, to avoid coming into contact with his wheelchair. There was a guy one time that said to me, and God bless his heart, I think he actually meant it to be empathetic. But he looked at me and he said, he heard about CJ's story and he said, "I feel so sorry for you." He goes, "I wouldn't want no retarded child." And he said it exactly like that. So that may go to show you, where his level of intelligence was. But one thing that I was forced to learn by being his mom was that other people's opinions don't matter and embarrassment is bullshit. Everybody in this room gets scared of what other people might think. If you start that business, what's your family going to say if you flop right on your face? If you were to quit your job, don't quit your job unless you have a really solid income stream, or nothing really that you have to worry about paying for. But if you quit your job to do this affiliate marketing thing, what are people going to think? And the one thing that being the mom of my son taught me was that what they think absolutely does not matter, because fuck them and fuck what they think of my son. And in the same regard, I've been able to take that into business. And as Wade said, I'm very outspoken, right? So let's just say that whatever I'm thinking is probably what's coming out of my mouth, whether that's very politically correct or, whether you're going to like it or you're going to hate it, doesn't matter. What comes out of my mouth is what comes out of my mouth. And I've become that way because I know that other people's opinions don't matter. At the end of the day, if they don't sit around your Thanksgiving table, then their opinion of you, your opinion of my presentation, somebody's opinion of what I choose to do for a living doesn't mean jack shit in the grand scheme of things. The only person whose opinion matters is my opinion and the opinion of my very immediate family, that is actually going to be around my Thanksgiving table. So we're taught, it's like ingrained in us that you're supposed to care what what would people think? I think people grow up hearing that from their parents, like, you can't do that, people are gonna think things. And bottom line is that it doesn't matter. So if there's anybody in here, like somebody who came up to me before this presentation and said, they have a voice, and they're just very afraid of showing it. Don't be afraid of showing it, because it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It just matters whether or not you're happy with yourself at the end of the day. You can't change the past, but you can help shape the future. And this kind of goes with complaining versus acting. The past is set in stone. It's done. Done. Nothing you can do is ever going to change what happened in the past. But what you can do is shape what's going to happen in the future. So my son, CJ, his stroke was cause unknown, and now that he's passed away, the cause always will be unknown. I can't change that he had a massive stroke and that he had to go through what he had to go through in his life, but what I can do is try and make sure that as few other children as possible end up having to go through that, which is why I'm so dedicated to doing stroke research, or doing the stroke walk, and supporting stroke research. Sorry. I'm not used to a clicker. So by living in the past, it's really impossible to get to the future. And the past will tempt you to stay with the status quo or be afraid to move forward. And so I don't know who came up with this quote, but it says the road to success is dotted with many tempting parking spaces. And in my opinion, the most common are excuses. You can't do this because, and again, I've already told you that excuses are bullshit. Fear of what other people will say, and fear of failing yourself. And both of those are absolutely, I'm trying to think of the word I'm trying to use. Both of those are absolutely, they're bullshit too, sorry. So I was trying to go with a different word, but the third one is assumption. And the third one is where you accept whatever limitations society has told you that you have. I could have assumed that with a GED, basically the best I was looking at was waitressing at a fancy restaurant where, my 20% was going to be of a higher average bill. So assumption would be that you can't do it. Assumption would be that you don't have the skills to do it. Assumption would be you don't have the money to do it. Assumption would be any reason possible that you think you already know the outcome without even trying. And the fourth one is acceptance. And that's pretty much you looking at what you have in life right now, and despite the fact that you want more, you're just going to accept whatever it is that you have right now. And I'm a big believer that you should not park your life in shitty parking spaces, that you should not let somebody else drive you around either. Don't let anybody else's excuses or fear or assumptions or acceptance determine where you go with your life. I'm a big believer in driving your company in the respect that if you want to take your company somewhere, if you want to do something with your company, if you want to, say launch a search engine marketing agency and turn it into a 7-figure company within 18 months, do that. Do not try and figure out why you're not there yet. Instead, drive yourself there. Do not accept that you're not there. You just have to keep moving yourself there. Driving your cause, same type of thing. I heard it mentioned in a session earlier. Missy lives it every single day with these conferences, but I'm also a big believer in giving back, and sometimes when shitty things happen to you, the best thing that you can do is try and make sure that shitty things don't happen to other people, and use your influence and use your voice to kind of make that happen, and driving your life. And the way that I describe this to a lot of people is a lot of people that I see get on a bus and the driver drives them around and they kind of know where they want to go, but they're just hoping the bus gets them there, and if not, they'll have to get off the wrong stop. And it's kind of like, you need to be driving your life. You don't need to be a passenger on somebody else's bus, and you don't need anybody else to tell you where you can and can't park. So I'm done with the analogies now. So self-education is one of the best ways to empower yourself. When my son first got sick, again, I was 21 years old, and suddenly I'm being asked questions like, hey, we're gonna put him on phenobarbital and we're gonna put him on Dilantin, and here's the side effects of Dilantin, and oh, we think he needs a G-tube. It's major surgery. Are you okay with getting it done? We wanna do an angiogram, which is putting a wire up in his brain, and he could stop breathing, but we kinda need to do it. All these things that it was like, holy crap, I am not qualified to be making any of these decisions. I have no idea how to make any of these decisions. And you kind of listen to the doctors, because unless you've been severely ill, most people tend to think that doctors are always right and always know exactly what they're doing. And they wanted to put a G-tube in my son when he was 8 weeks old. And I had went back to Ronald McDonald House, and I was talking with some of the other parents, and one of the moms looks at me and goes, well, doesn't he still eat from a bottle? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, why are they putting a G-tube in? And I said, well, because they said he'll stop in a few months. And she's like, so put it in when he stops. And I remember thinking, I can do that? Like, I can tell them that I don't want to do that. And I realized that I was relying on a lot of other people's opinions and education in order to make my decisions. And I think that that's a big problem in the affiliate marketing world. I think that's a big problem in the SEO world. I think that too many people read what other people say and take it verbatim, versus testing it on their own, versus improving your skills at every chance you get. So I actually went and read a book called Children with Cerebral Palsy, A Parent's Guide. And I'd say after reading 6 more books, I was probably more educated on the topic of pediatric stroke and cerebral palsy than half of my son's nurses or doctors were, especially as it related to him. If I needed to learn HTML, I went out and took an online course. When I needed to learn SEO, I read articles and tested until I figured out how to do it. When I needed to learn in business, I tried, I failed. I read, information that would make me stronger in doing it, and just learn from experience. And the other thing that I did was I surrounded myself with people that I either wanted to emulate, or people that were completely supportive of where it was that I was trying to get. When it came to my son, I surrounded myself with other parents that took this in a positive manner, other parents that weren't sitting at home crying every day, the parents that were like, shit happens, this sucks, let's move forward. In business, I surrounded myself with people that were either successful or that felt that I had everything it took to be successful. And so this quote that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, that is a very, very, very true quote. And I had actually, I'd given a commencement speech to a bunch of kids in Oklahoma that were products of the foster care system to kind of tell them, like, they had a leg up on me, they had diplomas. And this was one of the phrases one of the quotes that I really tried to instill in them, because I was like, look, if you're hanging around with people on the block who are doing nothing all day, that's kind of what you're going to end up doing. And I think it's the same thing in business. If you want to go far in business, if you want to do big things in business, you need to surround yourself with like-minded people. I'm not saying that you can't be friends with your BFF from high school that kind of went the wrong route. I'm just saying that you need to be really careful of who you put in your life, because people can do 2 things. They can either lift you up or they can drag you down, and you need to make sure that you have the right type of people in your life. So the other thing is that tomorrow may not always come. When CJ was 12, he became too big for me to lift. And for 6 years prior to that, I had been a single mom. And he just was too heavy. Like, I couldn't do it, and I had blown out my knee 3 times in 3 months. And the doctor said, you're not physically capable of lifting him anymore. We think it's time to put him in a home. And there was just no way. Like, I would have drugged myself every single day. Like, I could have popped my knee, my back, everything. There was just no way that I was going to put him in a home. And so my ex-husband, who I will give a lot of credit to, statistics say that most men that have a child like my son will find the nearest exit and run like hell, like they are on fire. My ex-husband was actually a very dedicated dad to him. And so my ex had said to me, you know, financially, I can't really afford it, but I can take them, I can lift them. So, you know, we worked out an arrangement where, you know, I covered the bills and he kept CJ in an environment that kept people around him. And that was unequivocally the second hardest thing that I've ever had to do in my life, which was not live with my son. But it was the only way that I could do it and keep him cared for in the way that he needed to be cared for, and not have him placed somewhere. And 2 years ago, I had my youngest son. And because we lived in Texas and CJ lived in Florida with his dad, Thomas had never met CJ. And so we were planning on going to do that over Christmas break in December, and CJ passed away on November 29th. And I can tell you that regret is probably one of the worst plates of food you could ever eat in your entire life. We always think that we have tomorrow. Like, we didn't do that thing in our personal lives that we really wanted to do, but we'll get to it tomorrow. We didn't do that thing in business that we really wanted to do, but like next week, I'm gonna write up the most awesome kick-ass to-do list this week, and I'm gonna rock it next week. But the truth is that we're only guaranteed 3 things in life, and that's death, taxes, and right now. And so one of the biggest things that I learned was anything that you want to do has to be done right now. You have to start doing it right now. You cannot wait for the sign. If you're waiting for the sign, this is fucking it. Like, that's the sign. You have to get things started right now, and you have to move your life forward now, and you have to go out and do all the things that you want to do now. Because you may not have tomorrow, you may not have 3 weeks, you may not have 6 weeks. And I'll tell you that recently they thought that they found a lump on me. And it actually just turned out to be a shadow of their little machine, which was awesome. But for 5 days, I was sitting there with the realization, even though I know this lesson, CJ's already told me this lesson, but for 5 days, I sat there with the realization, like, I'm not fucking done. I haven't done everything that I've wanted to do yet. So even when you know this information, you've got to remind yourself of this information. Do not get comfortable with where you're at. Somebody told me that once at a conference. Never get comfortable with whatever level of success you've achieved. And that's something I took very much to heart. So make sure that you remember that tomorrow is not guaranteed, and get done what you most want to get done today. And then number 2 is that your biggest setback can either fuel you or break you. So like I said before, you have 2 ways that you can treat any type of challenge. You can, as Wade said, curl up in a little ball in the corner and cry, or you can kind of go out and you know, really go at it. And so bottom line is that I don't care, and I've had this conversation a few times with people, I don't care what your challenges are. Yeah, I've had shitty challenges. Maybe there's people in this room that haven't had as shitty challenges, but there's probably people in this room that have had worse challenges. It's not a competition over who has the worst challenges, or who, you know, where you look at it and go, oh, well, my challenges aren't as severe, blah, blah, blah. Everybody is going to get knocked down by life at some point in time. The thing is that you guys have to decide to get up and ask life if that's all it's got to give you. Originally, I was going to put on that slide. I didn't know we were, you know, Will Reynolds set the stage for what language was acceptable. So originally, that slide was going to say, tell life you hit like a bitch. But I decided to make it a little more PC friendly. Because I promise you that it's not all life has. I don't care how bad your challenges are. Life's answer is always going to be no when you ask it, can you possibly throw me anything else? So this is my 2-year-old son, Thomas, that I told you guys about, that never got to, unfortunately, meet his brother. And he is an absolutely sweet, adorable child. I know it looks like I kidnapped him because he looks nothing like me. I've had people ask me if I was sure he was my baby. But he does look like my husband, so we're pretty sure we brought the right one home. But I mean, he is a great kid. And about 3.5 weeks ago, they told us that he had autism. And so my first thought, I'm not even gonna lie, was, what was I, mass murderer in my past life? Like, are you kidding me? But bottom line is that no matter what challenge you get through, there's always going to be one waiting for you on the other side. So if you break to this challenge, then you're never going to be made better by the 20 challenges that lie ahead to it. And don't think that once you're past the first challenge, that more aren't going to come. In my case, I'm very thankful to my son that on top of the ripple effect, on top of how he changed my life and got me into affiliate marketing and changed my income and everything I could imagine about my life, he gave me a master's degree in having a child with special needs. So with his brother, I'm able to hit the ground running with lovely things that I didn't have when I had CJ, like insurance, and the ability to pay for therapy sessions and things along those lines. And that leads me to the last thing, which is that you can survive anything. I know that everybody in this room at some point has hit a challenge in their life, and if you haven't, you will, where you kind of sit there and you think, there is no way, like, I'm gonna die. I am absolutely, like, there's no way that I can get through this. There's no way that I'm gonna recover from this. There is no way that I can bounce back from this. And the truth is, that's bullshit. I didn't think that I was gonna survive when they told me that my son had a massive bilateral stroke. I didn't think I was going to survive when they told me that he would never know who I was. He would know that my voice was familiar, but he would never know that I was his mom. I didn't think that I would survive when he passed away. And, for a fleeting second there, I didn't think I was going to survive yet another special needs child. I'm worrying about Thomas and what his life is going to be like, much in the same way that I worried about CJ. But the bottom line is that you make the decision as to whether or not you're going to survive things, and you're going to survive either way. Either way, you're going to make it through whatever that event was. It's just up to you whether or not you choose to make it through that event and take the lessons from that event, or take the excuses from that event. So basically, the truths of the matter are, in life and in business, that no matter how bad things may seem, and no matter how bad things may get, there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. You are going to survive. You are going to be able to move forward. I saw this saying, and I love this saying because I hate this phrase, just so you know, because it is the phrase that I hear most often. And I will tell you, if you have any friends that have special needs children, we hate that phrase, because it kind of makes it feel like, it was like, a special thing. And so they say that life doesn't give you any more you can handle. And I was on the internet and I saw this as a sign, so I can't take credit for this. But what it said underneath of it was, apparently life thinks I'm a badass. And apparently, right now that's kind of how I feel, that, life must think I am a raging badass. But life thinks all of you are badasses. You just have to prove them right. And I'm going to prove them right. And I would suggest that every single person in this room, you came here and you learned a ton of new information. You found a ton of new potential partners for your business. You met a ton of new contacts. You need to go home and you need to use them. And you need to realize that the sky's the limit. That if a fucking waitress with a GED can be standing in front of you right here as the CEO of a 7-figure company and giving a keynote on stage, despite the fact that she cursed the entire time, and doesn't exactly have the best public speaking skills, y'all can do whatever it is that you're looking to do. You just need to make the decision to go out and do it. So this is dedicated to my son. He is absolutely the bravest person that I've ever known. He always has been my hero, always will be my hero. And I hope that I was able to accurately and in a good manner kind of get across what he brought to my life. And I hope that everybody in this room is able to take something from his life home with them and make theirs a little bit better. So that's all I've got. Thank you.